So, welcome to the next episode of the Strategiewerkstatt, our Hitchhiker's Guide through Strategy. With me today is Mateusz, and he has a really awesome topic, namely digital and heavy assets. But what that's all about, that's what you can tell us. Mateusz, who are you and what are you doing?
Perfect. So welcome everybody. Happy to be on your show, Markus. So yeah, I can perhaps begin with telling a bit of what Cognite does and then sort of shift towards my exact role. So we are B2B software and service company, and we work, as you said, with heavy asset industries. So think about companies in energy, power sector, chemicals, pharma, any sort of facility when you have a lot of machines, production, etc. And perhaps you know it from your experience or the other listeners. When you're in the factory floor, whenever there's an alarm or an issue, every engineer is scrambling through data to figure out what is the root cause, how to fix that issue to ensure high uptime. You need to look into PLC, MES systems, SAP, so different databases, different sources, drawings, images, etc. So we spend a lot of time trying to figure out what's the issue. And at the same time, you need to do the same whenever you're planning maintenance or doing any sort of operational efficiency activity. So this is where my company comes in. We provide the software to organize that data so that you can get insights faster. We have specific tools for doing root cause analysis, planning maintenance, etc. You can think about it as in Google Maps. When you use it yourself, you go to the city, you see the restaurants with these reviews, images, you have these different data organized. So we do the same for heavy assets, so factories, power plants, refineries, so that you have easy accessible, all of this complex data in one place. And my role specifically is to essentially onboard customers, help them get value, essentially connect the business issues that they're having with the data, and they essentially get value from the software.
So let me understand a little bit better. So I've been working on the shop floor. You said like heavy machines, heavy metal. So there's a machine somewhere, like let's say it's an injection molding machine, 100-ton press, whatnot. So this machine generates data, and that's mainly, maybe it's in the PLC, maybe it's picked up by any sensors, then it's like been translated, it goes through a middleware, data lake, whatnot, into a final analysis. So which part of this, like, think of it as a work stream from the machine having that issue to the engineer sitting in front of the computer and getting this like graphic saying, hey, here's a root cause. In which part of that work stream are you like mostly focused on?
So essentially anywhere from where the data resides to an engineer. And it's not just the data that the machine generates, is that there's sometimes field engineer doing inspection and taking picture, or there's a lab report of oil that have that machine. It's in the ERP. So there's actually another system that have data about your machine. So we read it and then analyze some patterns. These days we are deploying AI agents. So you have like an assistant that you can ask, hey, I'm getting the oil leakage from that machine. What is the issue? And the agent is doing the entire root cause analysis for you, generating fault tree, checking all of the symptoms, and tells you, based on that data, this is the possible root cause. Please validate it yourself. You can involve other engineers, but you essentially get insights and recommendation. This is the root cause, this is how to fix it. We can even like ask the agents to schedule the work order in SAP or other parts. So really the workload of engineers is really changing. I mean, I work on before at General Electric with power plant equipment, gas turbines, etc. And it was just 7-8 years ago, but you can already see the shift today, and it's really exciting and outstanding, I would say.
So what are the specific challenges those industries face, right? So when I think about digital transformation, there's a lot turning around. How can I not use paper anymore and then use other tools to like digitize processes? But what's specific in heavy assets that's, and maybe not talk too much about the solution, but what are the specific challenges in the heavy asset industry to really go that digital transformation journey?
So there are two major ones, I would say. One is the sort of industry specifics. Compared to retail, finance, media, you're dealing with a lot of old databases, different protocols. Data is mainly unstructured. The same machine can be called differently in PLC, in SAP, on the vendor documentation. So you have a lot of like naming convention issues, a lot of different data formats. So when you want to build digital solution, you see, wow, it's so much more difficult. Like you might have been listening one of the latest earnings call from Tesla, and the VP for autonomous driving said it's very easy to make a POC of the car to go around the block, but to put it in production, it's a 10 years effort because of these complexities of industrial machinery. And second, it's more about culture, because industries we work with, they operate very often critical infrastructure, grids or factories. There's no room for error. Like trust and accuracy are paramount. So even with Gen AI, you see great adoption in sort of creative industries or when you want to analyze text. But when you are dealing with a machine that is failing, you cannot say, maybe this is the issue, or maybe do this replacement, or I'm not sure, or you cannot do basic predictions. You really need to have it grounded in data. And it makes it difficult to actually get adoption because you really need to be 100% correct, trustworthy, etc. So it's a bit more challenging. Of course, it's doable, but that's, I would say, it's the second. The culture, the attitude is, quite different compared to regular, let's say, light asset industries.
That takes me by surprise, what you say, right? This trustworthiness of the agent telling you need to replace this belt or this pump, because the companies I've seen from the inside was that the engineer stepped to the machine, like basically touched it and said, I believe it's the pump, right? I'm not 100% sure, but maybe I'm a physicist, so I'm like data driven. So I would say, okay, I trust your hand, but show me the data, right? So therefore, I would maybe more dive into that culture topic, because the industries I've seen, it's the proud engineer doing the maintenance, doing the repair of the machine. And it's not at all, I would say it's trustworthy in that person, but it's not at all trustworthy in the sense that it's anyhow data driven. So it's more like the gut feeling, this machine sounds like it's dripping oil, right? And then it's the engineer solving the problem. So therefore, I'm a little bit taken aback by your statement saying, the AI needs to, or the agent needs to be 100% trustworthy, because I've not seen this trustworthiness from the basically engineers doing the actual repairs. So what's your take on that one?
No, exactly, because you're very much spot on, and I observe the same. The reliance of people is high, and very often, and also that's if you look at it from the other side, engineers, first of all, they went through studies and they work for decades on specific machine equipment. So there's sort of gut feeling or experience that is sort of embedded in your brain that it's not that easy to explain. And also in the 5-10 years ago, there was a lot of trials with machine learning, predictive maintenance, and a lot of issues came from the fact that companies relied purely on the sensor data. So only time series to tell you about the machine will break. And it was just one data point. You were trying to use mathematics to sort of resemble physics, as you said. So of course, a lot of let's say pushback from the industry, and people said, I don't trust this AI, you should work with people. But now the challenge is to really encode the engineer's knowledge into software, so that this kind of knowledge or intuition, again, replicated or let's say recorded in the data, in the previous inspection, in the previous resolution that the engineer issued, is somehow included in software so that you can use it in the future generations. It's also relevant because there's a generational shift across many industries. There are more people sort of closer to retirement than entering the market. So most of the executives we work with, they are trying to address that challenge, on one hand, attracting talent, but also leveraging that knowledge that senior engineers have. And I think it's obvious for everybody right now that it's not like there will be one magic AI that will answer all the questions. We need to provide some sort of reasoning, and you need to empower people to achieve more. Not just, it's not about replicating people, but actually empowering them and taking advantage of this amazing brain that experienced engineers have and so on.
As I said, it's not just crunching the time series and saying now the sensor has a higher load and
oscillating,
oscillates more, and then we know if this happens, then this and this happens afterward. I mean, yes, you can surely use AI for that, but you can also simply look at the data and say, once it is oscillating, you need to replace that stuff. You're right. So those were the beginnings that I've also seen in machine learning and using these time series, also vendors that, got you 100 sensors, just plug them in, and then here's our suite, and it will give you all the data afterwards. But the reasoning is important. But now I wonder, how do you get that information out of the senior engineer's head? Because I've maybe overpainted that image, but it's the guy putting the hand on the machine and saying, it feels like it's dripping oil. How do you get his reasoning out of his head into actually the data that you need in order to drive that decision making of the like now better AI models or agents we have.
Indeed. So we do it in two steps. At the beginning, we sort of design, okay, we're going to work with this and this machine or this and this factory. And we define what kind of data is needed to sort of assess the health of that machine or to do an operation maintenance. In step one, we define the asset, the machine, and integrate all the relevant data from PLCs, previous history of previous issues, some SAP records, images, etc. So we just have a first baseline, all data that are sort of defining the state of the machine. And then the second step is more fluid. So once sort of engineers start using it, we of course have the live feed. So all of the, if there's an issue, it was resolved in some way, we have the record of that, and that empowers the knowledge graph. So basically, like the second step is essentially registering any sort of activity that engineers did. Like if they did a resolution, we learn, we sort of train the model to remember that resolution. So it's a bit more fluid, takes time to really, get to certain level of maturity, etc. But it's, learns by doing, basically, trying to capture the new data that is coming in.
So it's like using that feedback loop of the engineers that actually solve that problem, right? Using that to like train and enter that as a data set as well, right? It's not just the sensor and solution itself, it's also the reasoning behind what did they do in order to get there.
Exactly. So these kind of actions, they feed the knowledge graph. This is sort of the industrial name for the data that encompasses the machine. And then, as you said, it's improved on a daily basis as the life cycle progresses of the machine.
Apart from what you said, like the generation shift issue, we see that senior engineers that partially been at companies for 20, 30 years that have all that knowledge now phasing out, and we have younger generations coming in that at least what data says are not so stable in their jobs for a long time, right? So there's a lot of change happening. Apart from that, what other benefits would a company reap from like going down that funnel and saying now we get more into digital transformation for our heavy asset machines?
So in general, like I'm not a big fan of the word transformation in the concept of digital transformation because it tells you this is like sort of end process. Like you go from A to B and now you are transformed. But it's basically a next natural step after or alongside all of the continuous improvement initiatives. Like companies were doing Six Sigma in management for decades. And now data, cloud, software gives you yet another tooling to further improve your efficiency, remove waste, introduce or increase standardization. So like another tooling that you have to sort of further continuously improve. And it's also not like there's one magic use case that you implement AI here and it will sort of solve the problem. It's a combination of dozens or hundreds of small use cases that you sort of do every day. It's really about like how everybody is working and takes decisions. Like I often ask if we talk with end users, I like to ask them, so how do you take decisions today? How do you use data? And a lot of them are like, I touch machine. I know it's in a good state. And it works a lot in many cases, believe me, or you know it. But it may not work one time, or maybe the other guy will not be so lucky or so good. And of course, executives also always be, okay, where can we get more margins? Are we sure? Maybe we can squeeze this machine a bit more. So there's a lot of like small, like Kaizen little initiatives that.
You said transformation is not like coming from A to B. It's a continuous improvement process. And I often use not the word continuous, but conscious. It's a conscious improvement process. So you have to consciously decide to actually improve on your system, right? So, which means that at one point you have to take the first step. And I'm sure there are heavy asset industries out there that are hesitant to like take that first step. So what would you give them as like a tip to say, to get on that journey? What would be the easiest and best first step to like get on that digital transformation journey towards this aided agentic problem-solving processes?
Indeed. So there's no late mover advantage in digital transformation. Sure, maybe if you wait a few more years, some of the solution will crystallize and you will pick better ones in 5 years from now.
But you really might also be gone, right? So your company might be closed because others were faster. Okay.
So you really need to get engaged, put foot on the gas to really get into the learning curve because things will get better after you start. And at the beginning, so we always try to look at the, what is your business objective? What is kind of the business issue you're struggling with? Where's the high value? Like, what's the big problem we can solve to basically show the impact, raise this awareness? So typically I would advise, okay, look at, your strategy where you are. What can we fix? Is it something about uptime of the machines? Maybe it's efficiency of the people. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's more on the revenue generation side instead of, let's say, cost reduction. So trying to find a good high value use case. And then afterwards you have the momentum and you can execute afterwards.
So find the use case and then really step on the gas because, as you said, there's no late mover advantage. I think it's a late mover disadvantage in that space. It's really
Exactly.
disadvantage. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of companies just do it small things like they also see it as we need to embark on this 5-year strategic journey. And they plan 1 year or 2 years for it, build a lot of internal stuff, and that's also not the way to go. Surely planning is
Too late,
important.
too
Exactly.
slow.
But I mean too late, too slow. But you know how it is with the strategy. You can define it, but then everybody has a strategy until you get hit in the face. Huh? So it's a lot about day-to-day activities. So
Yeah.
getting into this learning curve methodologically, it's really the way to go.
Try, fail, learn, make it better next time, evolve your strategy constantly to be not stuck on a
Exactly.
5-year plan that goes in the wrong direction.
Yes.
As a final question to you, like, let's look into the future. So how, like, from what you do, how does the future look like? What can we expect? And you can take any direction that you like in that answer.
Yeah, so what excites me and on the one hand also frightens me is that we are moving towards a SaaS world. And I don't mean software as a service, I mean service as a software, like the other way around. So more and more workflows and jobs could be automated, and then we will use software to do specific types of jobs. And I also see it among the investors. They start to gauge companies based on the revenue per employee, how productive your people are. It also, of course, it makes sense from the executive level. You want to increase this productivity, but for sort of regular engineers, regular employees, the pressure to become more productive, to achieve more, it's on one hand, it's great because you will get all of these tools to get rid of mundane work. You will focus on the productive stuff, but it will be really a tough game. And people really need to learn and adapt how to use technology. And the pace is accelerating because people will be talking about it for years, but what's happening in the last year or two, it's really
it's insane. Yeah, that's also something that frightens me, right? So revenue per employee, yes, that's more important. We see a lot of cost-cutting initiatives happening everywhere, where first companies already say AI first. So you only get a new headcount if you can show that this job cannot be done also by as I said, service as a software. I do hope that in the end, we humans will realize that it's not all about the money and the revenue, but maybe we get off with, let's say 25 hours a week at same pay, right?
Exactly.
My fear is that shareholders, stakeholders, some that can sieve off money to an extent, we get greed in their eyes and say, wow, we can press it even more and get some more out of it. So I do hope that there will be also movements where we see a more human way of dealing with things and getting into the really work life, not balance, but really a fusion of where this works for everyone. That's my big hope. So I'm not seeing it as dire and as dark. I really hope that we have the ingenuity to drive this into a future that's bright for everyone and not just dark.
No, exactly. At the end of the day, it's a very exciting moment, exciting times, and let's see how it goes. But it's definitely great to be part of it and shape it in a way. That's a lot of positive there as well.
Thanks very much for the great talk. We jumped into heavy assets. We found the engineer touching the machine and feeling that it's leaking oil. I will keep that image for a while now, for the next couple of weeks for sure. And I think we found that transformation is never an A to B thing. It's always a process. And especially in that case, there's only a late mover disadvantage. I think that's a key message to take away. So in this game, if you move too late, you will not be able to catch up. That's what really strikes in my head now as the message of the episode.
Yeah, well summarized. Thanks a lot for the invite to be here.
Take care. Yeah. As Douglas Adams says, or the dolphins in that book say, thank you, goodbye, and thanks for the fish, right? So have a nice one. Take care. And thanks for the episode.
Likewise. Take care. Thank you.